The other thing about the text of the Qur'an that we want to establish, and this would have something to do indeed with its compilation as well, going back to the point I was making about the text being kind of cut up by commentary and by traditions that report that the occasion of revelation of one verse and another was various. A different kind of criticism, which makes its appearance now, is rather to look at the text as being basically whole discourses. So you try to see what is the text trying to tell us itself, and how is the text itself constructed to be an effective text that has whole discourses in it. And when you come at it from that kind of approach, you begin to be able to see that there is more unity in the surahs than is usually given as a thing. There's a considerable deal of unity to the text. With that, you can also see something of the process of compilation and editing. For example, if you look in Surah 4, verse 176 on page 241 in your text, although you can't see it because this is Arabic that I'm referring to, the rhyme scheme which has prevailed through the whole surah suddenly here is not upheld in this last verse. And furthermore, this last verse doesn't have anything to do with the discourse that was just preceding. And furthermore, the surah more or less finishes and winds up with verse 175, and then you have this additional verse stuck on at the end, 176, that rhetorically doesn't follow. So what do you say about that? Is it an addition to the text? Yes, it's added. But does that mean it was added by other than Muhammad? No, because this is part of the process where, as the revelation was ongoing, this verse was placed there. Why was it placed there? Because it refers to a subject dealing with inheritance that is dealt with in verses 11 and 12 at the beginning of the same surah. So that's why it was put in this surah. Another example of that nature is found in in Surah 73 on pages 1554, 1555. Now, if you look in this surah, which is only a few pages long, from verse 1 through verse 19, you'll observe that the verses are all short verses. And verse 19 says, "Verily this is an admonition, therefore whoso will, let him take the straight path to his Lord." That sounds like concluding words. And then you have this other long verse, which is very long and is all one verse, and it concludes at the end with a word which also doesn't rhyme with the rest of the rhyme scheme of the surah. Does that mean that this then is added after Muhammad? No. On the contrary, here, if you look at the details of the text, the probability of this being something from Muhammad himself is very high. It says, "Thy Lord doth know that thou standest forth to prayer nigh 2/3 of the night, or half the night, or 1/3 of the night, and so doth a party with thee, but Allah doth appoint the night." It goes on talking to him directly in a way where you would expect this to be something particular to the Prophet Muhammad, and something that would not seem to, in the sense of modern criticism, betray any possible motivation for addition. If you look at another argument, which is separate from that, a different sort of argument, which is one that Muslims would find very odd, but would be something that would counter a certain type of Western criticism, nevertheless. And that is that had this text gone through any extensive process of editing after the Prophet's time, certain things in the text would have definitely been deleted. Amongst these are Surah number 66, O prophet, why holdest thou to be forbidden that which Allah has made lawful to thee? Thou seekest to please thy consorts. Well, let's say thy wives. You seek to please your wives, but Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. Allah has already prescribed for you, O Muslims, method of absolution from your oaths, and Allah is your protector, and He is full of knowledge and wisdom. So the Prophet had sworn to forbid something to himself, but there is a way where absolution from the oath is prescribed. And then it goes on to say, this is page 1490 and 1491. When the Prophet disclosed a matter in confidence to one of his wives, and she then divulged it to another, and Allah made it known to him, and he confronted her with part thereof, and he held back a part. Then when he told her thereof, she said, Who told thee this? He said, He told me who knows and is well acquainted with all things. If you too, and this is thought to be addressed to two of the wives. If you two turn in repentance to him, your hearts are indeed so inclined, but if you back up each other against him, then Allah is his protector, and Gabriel and every righteous one among those who believe, and furthermore, the angels will back him up. It may be that if he divorced you all, that Allah will give him in exchange wives better than you, and so on. Now, considering the nature and tenor of this text, and the fact that it is specially directed to the prophet, and the fact that it is not usable and has not been used to elaborate law, there doesn't seem to be any possible motivation for fabricating and inserting this, and that is a proof simply that this comes directly with the original text from the prophet himself, and that is a proof of the authentic transmission of the text. Another proof of it is the orthographic irregularities in the Qur'an. And you cannot appreciate these without knowing Arabic, but the Qur'an is filled with orthographic irregularities. That is what would be colloquially called in other instances dealing with other books, scribal mistakes or something. And that means that there are many cases where words are written in one way and pronounced in another way because the way is not some standard way. So in other words, there was some kind of rustic beginning of the process of writing when the Qur'an was written down, and that was not later smoothed out by an editing process where someone went through and found all of these irregularities and got rid of them. Furthermore, one of them, as even an example of non-standard grammar, in the hadani lasahiran, should read by normal Arabic grammar, which is also used generally in the rest of the Qur'an, in the hadaini lasahiran, not in the hadani lasahiran. So hadain is, maybe you don't hear it too well, but it's a substantial grammatical difference, and yet there that is in the text. Now, had anyone wanted to edit the text, they would most certainly have gotten rid of that. That would have been the very first thing to go because it's non-standard. And that kind of thing attests then to the overall, to the authenticity of the transmission of the text of the Qur'an from the beginning.